Well, what's up? Here we are. Jim, Sharon, and Ed. The sports crew is here. They nominated me as sports director to lead things off, which is probably a bad idea. I'm your point guard. Just to get it going here.
Golf clap.
How you guys doing tonight?
Good, Jim. Good. Sharon, good seeing you.
I brought my beverage with me.
Okay. Put that back up. What'd you just have?
I have my.
Oh, you got a full-on beer.
I do. I have
Nice.
a sweet hazy IPA.
You are really taking Talktoberfest to heart.
Hey, that's what Beth Troutman's been saying. It. Grab your favorite beverage and have a seat. So it's either that, coffee, or red wine. So.
We got Tracy saying hello, Lily saying hello, and Joe Panko.
Joe Panko, yeah. Good crew. We know Joe. Joe's our friend for the Charlotte Touchdown Club, and Tracy and Lily, appreciate you all. We'll write down your questions. You all know how this goes, right? So we'll get started. I feel like, I can tell my story in a little bit. I've just actually told some of it this morning. We were talking about getting into broadcasting this morning, but I thought for starters, we talk about how you both kind of arrived to where you are working at BT and your path career-wise, and you both have really interesting ones. And Sharon, I remember you came up from Florida State. You were working down there for a couple of years. So maybe just give us a couple of minutes of, your background and ending up here and all these many 20 whatever years later still being at WBT.
It's been a while. Yes. Well, as a lot of people know, I'm a Carolina grad. So I started out there and went to graduate school there as well. And have degrees in radio, television, and motion pictures is my undergrad, and communication studies for grad school. And when I left there, I got a job at Florida State in their media relations office and did all sorts of fun stuff. But one of my main duties was this little show called FSU Headlines, and it was radio. And I would go around and interview professors or the football coach, who was Bobby Bowden at the time, or whatever was going on, and do this little 3-minute radio show. And it was great. And I spent 5 years in Tallahassee, and that morphed into doing a lot of stuff with sports. And at Florida State, they had to deal with the Sunshine Network, which was Fox Sports at the time down there in Florida, and did a lot of stuff with them. And got married and decided that we didn't want to live in Tallahassee. My husband was in Atlanta, and I worked briefly there at CNN. And I decided I did not like CNN in the slightest. So saw a job opening at WBT and contacted Jim Szoke. And that's how I ended up at WBT, even though it's funny, after literally I think a few days after the interview, and I followed up, hey, what's the scoop? And he's like, I'm leaving. I was like, what? Szoke left at the time to go to the Fox the first time when the Panthers went over there. And right. I don't think there was anybody left in the sports department except maybe Brett McMillan was still there for a while. So that's how I ended up in Charlotte. And now I've been here ever since. That was in 2000. So I've been here a really long time. So
23 years later. How about that?
Oh, sure. That's great.
Pretty wild.
I've got 29 years, as you said, separated by 5 years at WRFX, but 29 years for me. And Ed Billick, you've got an interesting story too. And, we'll get to when you started at BT, but when I first met you, the first time I met you was we were doing, I think it was an NFL draft show at the stadium. John Hancock and I were in one of those WBT RV vehicles or a big bus, whatever it was, broadcasting from that. And you walked up and introduced yourself, and John knew you, and you guys knew each other. And he said, that's Ed, and he's an executive at Frito-Lay who wants to be a sports announcer. So you take it from there.
Well, Jim, and for all of you, back in high school, I was on the broadcasting staff. I did JV and senior high school football games at the stadium, morning announcements and that kind of thing. Then when I went to college, I was on WERG. It's a college radio station. Had a sports show, had a rock show, was a DJ, and I always had that in my blood. But as things happened in life, and I got a career started with Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel because I'm from Pittsburgh. And then I found Frito-Lay back many, many years ago, and I had a wonderful 32 career with Frito-Lay. So I could talk potato chips, Doritos, Fritos all day long. But that passion of being getting into broadcasting was always still there. So I put myself through broadcasting school back in 2011. There was an opportunity to do an internship there at WBT with Charlotte Morning News with Al and Stacy. And I saw Jim, met you there again. And Mark Garrison and Chad Bauer. And I said to Jim, hey, if you ever need somebody help doing sports, so I said, Jim sent you a tape. And from there, then it started on the weekends in August with Don Russell and Boomer. We were rotating Saturdays and Sundays doing sports. I've learned a lot from Don Russell, from Chad Bauer, and of course from you, Jim. So now 12 years later, and yeah, backfill you guys doing sports. But Sharon and I also co-host now for 3 years Carolina Focus, a public affairs show, right, Sharon? And we get to interview all kind of neat people and all kind of different things. And then I'm also David Chadwick's producer. So, you know, in broadcasting, they ask you to do something, you say yes, and you learn and you grow. So, boy, it's been a quick 12 years, Jim.
Yeah, and you're a baby in this WBT land. 12 years, you're just starting out. You got to do at least 25 to feel like you've been there for a while.
Yeah, like you guys.
Give you a couple of our listeners that have been chiming in here. Lily, you mentioned, says hello. Tracy, hello. Joe Panko says, will the Panthers win a game? I'll let one of you two answer that one. Deba, it's either Deba or Deba, D-E-V-A. Sorry, Broussard. Deba? I think it's Deba. Probably
Deba.
Deba's not right? Deba started out with hell and then corrected with hello. She came back later with the O. So hello. At first, I kind of like the first one. Hell. Hell. Hello. Cassidy. Hey, Cassidy Hooper. Cassidy calls
Cassidy
all the time. We love Cassidy. Wes Branham said, great story. Don't know which of the two that applied to you. I'm going to say it was both. Stories were great.
Probably it's just more interesting.
Yeah, everybody, appreciate you being here. And, you know, for me, I've been there since, 89, I think is when I started at WBT. And the Hornets were brand new. And Steve, I was doing traffic reporting. And Steve Martin was kind enough to give me like your shot, Ed, of doing like Saturday sports, filling in for him. We used to have a sports talk show, so I would do that, fill in for that. And then I got started with the Hornets pre and half and post game show. And I'll condense all this into 45 seconds, I'm sure. But anyway, you know, in 93, the Panthers were in the hunt. Carolina was in the hunt for a team and going to the expansion meetings and all that. And we got it in 93. 95 was the first season, and being on that first broadcast crew with Bill Rosinski and Roman Gabriel and myself to start things out for Roman was 7 years. Bill did the first 10 years. It was just a great growing city and opportunities with first the Hornets, which I did. Well, I don't know exactly, but it was like about 8-9 seasons of every Hornets game, home and away, doing that and filling in, doing play-by-play, doing morning and afternoon drive, being on all the shows. I've worked with about half the people you've ever heard that worked on WBT over the last 30 years. I've worked with them. So it's been great as far as my time with BT. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And you guys are so great to work with and so easy to work with too.
Well, Jim, you're a Hall of Famer, and hats off for that. But you've
let me get my jacket. Hang on. Oh, I don't have one.
a jacket there. But you've had some great mentors, Jim. Some really classic veterans as well. So
yeah,
blessed career.
No, really have. I mean, I worked with Hancock, worked with Mike Collins. I should probably do it in order. Russell and Flynn, John Robinson, Mike Collins. This is kind of in order. Spires and Krantz back in the day. Al Gardner, Alan Stacy, of course, now Bo and Beth. So many great ones all throughout the many years there. So we're getting a couple questions here as I'm talking. And first one was for you as I scroll back up, Sharon. You guys can see these two, right, on your screen?
Yeah, we can see them.
Yeah.
So Patty, why don't you read Patty's question, Sharon, since it's directed to you, then you can answer it.
Okay. Sharon,
and Ed, also, I think you're both in one. So you're doing the same question as both of you, actually.
Okay. Yes, from Patty. We had Baltimore girl here. I heard on your early morning broadcast last year that with Ed, it was the beginning of spring training. Ed, a Pirates fan, my favorite National League team. But the Orioles are my favorite overall. Okay. It said that at that point you are an Orioles fan. Yes, I am. And that my dad was a pitcher for the Orioles. Yes, my dad pitched in the Baltimore organization. He was there for 5 years. His name is Arnie Thorsland. And they didn't have a draft back then when he got, came out of high school at age 18. And the teams all went around. They came to your house. And they'd sit down and give their pitch and say, all right, we want you to sign for this much money, or we'll do this for you. So there was no draft back then in 1959. And so he decided to go with the Orioles, even though his favorite team, he liked the Red Sox because he grew up in New York City and New Jersey up there. And he loved Ted Williams, the splendid splinter, but they didn't offer as much money as the Orioles. And he liked what they had to say too. So he decided to sign with the Orioles for the whopping fee of $750,000, but that was actually a lot of money back then. So, and he was a pitcher, and his fastball was 98 miles an hour. He was really good.
Sharon, does he have a baseball card?
He does. And in fact, I have a copy of one because all of his stuff burned up. His family, their house burned down when he was older and lost almost everything. But he was in rookie ball and played for a few years with Dean Chance and Boog Powell. He came up with Boog Powell, Pat Billick, some pretty big time names there. And so Dean Chance had a lot of stuff that he had held on to, a lot of memorabilia, and passed a lot of that back on to my dad. And I've actually had some listeners from WBT years ago. Somebody sent me a card. They were a fan, and they had found this really cool, like, original newspaper picture and stuff too of my dad. So he ended up blowing out his arm. Earl Weaver was his manager and tried to teach him a slider.
Earl was a tough dude, wasn't he?
So he ended up having to retire after 5 years, but he loved it. It was fun, and it was fun growing up hearing all the stories with, especially Boog Powell. And Dean Chance was a hoot. He's passed away since a couple years ago, but he was a hoot. So yeah, so my dad was there with the Orioles for all. Go O's. Thanks, Rod.
There you go, Rod.
Unfortunately, we fizzled out this year, which is a big drag. I had high hopes for us this year, but
yeah, future years look great, Sharon.
Big time. We've got a great farm system, great young players in place, and if they would just get rid of the 3-game series for the wild card, we'd be good. We'd need to go back to the one and done so nobody has to sit. Can you see that? I mean, out of all of the teams, the higher seeds that had to sit, they went 1-9, 1-9 in the division series. 1-9.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Too much time off?
Way too much time off. To me, I mean, when you play baseball, you play every day. You're hitting every day. You're pitching. I mean, everything is every day. And you get out of that routine and sit around and twiddle your thumbs for 5 days. It completely messes with the mojo. And I think it has to be true because Dodgers got swept, Orioles got swept, Twins got swept. I mean, it was only Atlanta that managed to get one win. So,
hey, John Hancock's with us.
3-game series. Yeah, that's
we got Hancock out here. We got some folks
right.
lining up. There's Hancock. Is Matt Pinto going to be on? Matt Pinto, we're efforting to get Matt Pinto, the voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder, to drop by. John, for you. That's a good Hancock. Hancock's the best. Wes said your switch in careers was nice to hear, Ed. So you might be the Jackie Robinson of snacks to sports broadcasting, like that trailblazer that kind of leads a path of people in the snack industry into sports broadcasting.
Hey, I want to say thank you, Patty, for listening to Carolina Focus. We got a listener out there, Sharon.
I just saw that one.
Excellent.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday. Well, we got Greg Vasick. Jim, glad to have you as voice of ECU. You're one of the bright spots listening during a disappointing season. Lots of parallels with Panthers so far this year. That is 100% true.
Yeah. Yes.
They are very similar. Although ECU does have a win, so that does differentiate them. Tracy,
we'll get there. Maybe.
Tracy says, "Hey Jim, how you like that drive to ECU?"
Oh yeah,
4 hours. I'm from that area. I don't like that drive sometimes. Love going home. Spent many weekends in Greenville. So Sandra's coming with me. This will be her first game with me going down there. She went up to we played App State, so we went to Boone together and did that game. But we're going to do since there's no Panther game, it's kind of like people are saying, "What are you doing your off weekend?" Calling a football game in Greenville, North Carolina, as they play the Charlotte 49ers this week out there.
Oh,
nice.
We're also 1-5.
Have been switched. It would have been nice to have it here in Charlotte to at least save you that drive. But
no kidding, I know. But next year, hopefully I'm still doing it next year, and we haven't even discussed next year yet, but they are on the schedule in Charlotte for next year. So if I'm doing year 2, then I will have that home game finally. So that'll be a break in the schedule for sure.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
Brutal drive. That's a brutal drive.
Jim, a question I have. I mean, we're all upbeat people, but broadcasting a team that loses frequently, how do you keep yourself pumped? I mean, you guys are professionals, and I listen to you, but it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely more fun when your team wins because the games are more exciting, they're more memorable, and Sharon knows this as much as anyone. It's more fun to talk with the players and the coaches because there's a lot more detail and stuff they want to add as opposed to when they lose, and there's really not a lot to say. I mean, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. I was here for 1-15, and I've been here for 15-1 with the Panthers, and that 1-15 was winning the first one and losing 15 in a row after that. So it is what it is, and each season has their own storylines. The thing that comes out of bad seasons is usually you repair it as you move forward. So when the team went 1-15, that ushered in the Ron Rivera. Ushered in the John Fox, Julius Peppers era.
Mhm.
And then John's last year, after taking them to a Super Bowl a few years later, was 2-14, which brought in the Cam Newton, Ron Rivera era. And I understand the fact the Panthers traded a lot for Bryce, but there's a lot of other things that sets you up for success in this league, and they have other draft picks and the abilities to make trades. That now they're identifying what Bryce can do and what he'll be like as a pro. I think they'll surround him moving forward, whether it be with anything other than a first round pick, with second round picks and trades and free agency players that will also complement what he's doing out there. So I think, again, just hang on. It's not the best of times when your team is losing, and ECU's the same boat. They'll identify their defense is good at ECU, but they've got to fix the offense moving forward. And I think they'll win a few more games this year, but they've got to fix their offense for you ECU Pirate fans out there. But, it's like Sharon last year with the, I know you're a big Tar Heel fan. You went to UNC. Last year was supposed to be their year, and they laid an egg week one, and the whole season was kind of that way. And then this year, you thought they'd be good with Drake May, but I mean, I don't think anyone saw undefeated this deep and top 10 at this point in the season, probably.
Yeah. I am super excited, and I'm always ever the optimist, of course, when it comes to my Tar Heels. And I think getting Tez Walker back was just a huge coup. Yeah. I mean, they've looked like a different offense with him last week. They were just rolling over Miami. So yeah, I mean, we started out, had a little rough year last year, then certainly finished poorly. But come out this year, they've revamped the defense, got some new coaches in there. Even with some of the losses that we had on offense and some of our key defensive players as well, we've managed to really get rolling. So it's been exciting, and especially that win over Miami. That was 5 in a row over Miami. Whoever would have thought the Tar Heels would win 5 in a row over Miami, but I'll take it. So hey, we might be back here in Charlotte come December 2nd for the ACC championship, if I don't curse us by saying that.
So, Sharon and I got to watch the Tar Heel Miami game in Miami, even though the game was in Chapel Hill. We were at the hotel lobby bar with some others down there after dinner, and we got, obviously being an ESPN game, it was easy to get that game on there. But that was a good win for the Tar Heels.
Oh gosh, it was massive. I mean, we just looked so good. The first half was a little rough, but the second half, man, just started rolling. Like I said, Tez Walker is a baller, big time. So it's really exciting to have him out there now, and I have high hopes for us moving forward.
Hey, who do you guys have this weekend?
I knew you were going to ask me that because I can't remember.
I think it's Virginia, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yes, the South's oldest rivalry.
Yeah,
the South's oldest rivalry.
Hey, Ed, just because we have Hancock on here, hopefully he's still hanging out here. Another thing we didn't talk much about was your involvement with John's bike drive every year around the Christmas season, and I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart, and you've jumped in like nobody else on the staff with your involvement with that.
Well, I tell you what, and we hope to do it again this year. But there's been doing it since 2007 when I was with Frito-Lay, and then moving over to WBT. But the joy we bring children with bicycles and gifts, and the joy we have in greeting our listeners as they're donating. I mean, there's so many components to that. You can never script it out because it's all kind of grassroots. It just happens. Stuff happens. So with John's leadership and his passion for this, and I enjoy doing it. It's part of the Christmas season now for me. And we thank all of our listeners for donating. I mean, last year, I think it was 800 some bikes, and then there were another 200 at the store. That's a lot of bicycles that our listeners are donating. So again, thanks to all the folks there.
And there's Hancock chiming in on cue. So we couldn't do the bike drive without Ed, period. And that is true, my friend. You work, it's not just that night. You work on that for a big chunk of the year, I know. And obviously John's involvement at the top, but you have a lot of your organization and all that you put into that is so great.
And Joe says it's fun to give. It always is fun to give, especially that time of year.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, Cassidy asked a question. Where do you guys broadcast from when you do games? You have a broadcasting booth, I'm sure. And then Sharon, you're on the sidelines. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, Jim and the guys are upstairs on the fourth floor of the press box at Bank of America Stadium, or like in Miami this last week, it seemed like they were in outer space in a corner because oh my gosh, the broadcast booth is so bad. But they have, Jim can explain more about what their booth looks like. I am on the sidelines for the Panther games right now. I go down, so I stand behind the players and the coaches. I stand behind the bench and go back and forth behind all the guys and stuff to try to listen in and see who's saying
You
what.
hear everything they're saying to each other, don't you?
I can hear a lot. Yeah. It depends on how loud it is and how loud the coach is who's yelling or talking to the players too. So you get a pretty good vibe of what's going through players' minds and what the feeling is. And, if they've got a lot of energy or if, guys are frustrated, you get to, it's great. I love it because you get such a bird's eye view of what's going on in the game and what the players are thinking, what the coaches are thinking. And it's a really fun place to be during a game. And when sometimes when I'm not doing sidelines, and in the past couple of years here, I go up in the press box. And so I'm in the press box watching things. And then there's Jim's putting up the view of.
It's kind of a glare on it. This is how far away we were at the Miami one. Hang on.
Whoops.
So Jim, I mean, you got 20/20 vision or maybe better, but I mean, you have TV screens. Yes, you have to.
Yes, you got to do TV screens.
That's what you're trying to see. Yeah.
That's weird. You couldn't see across the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
So
that's what they were asking. They would say to me, Sharon, what yard line are they on? Sharon, where's the ball?
So Cassidy asked a question like, at the Panther Stadium, like Sharon said, 400 level. We're at about the 35 to 40-yard line on the side near the railroad tracks away from the downtown skyline. Mm-hmm. So is where we are there. And most of those are somewhere between like the 30s or somewhere where we normally are. Sometimes we're in corners of an end zone. So you need binoculars, you need the TV monitors. Pittsburgh, actually, Ed, thank you. Pittsburgh, your stadium's one of the worst because we're in the corner of the end zone at it used to be Heinz Field. What's it called now in Pittsburgh?
Acrisure Stadium. Yeah, we all still call it Heinz Field.
Yeah. I would say that's hard to get rid of, like the Carrier Dome at Syracuse.
Erickson Stadium here, wasn't it?
It was.
It was. That was the first name for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more questions. I'm just going in order. We'll try to catch all of them. Michael Lapino, Jim, what was the hardest or most frustrating game you ever called? And Sharon, you could chime in with this one as well. For me, it's an easy answer. It is Super Bowl 50.
Oh.
Because Super Bowl 38 was such a surprise. That team was good, obviously, to get to the playoffs even, but they had to go into St. Louis and beat a Rams team that they were double-digit underdogs, double overtime, and nobody had them beating Philadelphia. So it was pure upsets and surprise. And the fact that they took the Patriots down to the wire was stunning, really. They just really got hot. But the Super Bowl, obviously, the 2015 team, not only went 15-1, was 17-1 rolling into that final game. Everyone knows, blew out the Arizona Cardinals on the home field for the NFC title game. Peyton Manning was like 100 years old, and he played like that in the Super Bowl. They won that game with defense and takeaways and special teams, almost everything but Peyton Manning. And we just laid the biggest egg that I can't to this day believe we lost by 14 points. I would have thought at the very least it would have gone down to the wire, and we just couldn't adjust and figure out, Von Miller and them getting pressure on the quarterback the entire game. But then we just did dumb things, we miss a field goal. We don't, fall on a turnover, just different things like that. It just was such a frustrating game because that team was one of the best teams in NFL history up to that last game. And if they had won that game, they would go down in the books of outside of the 72 Dolphins, they probably would have been ranked as one of the top 5 teams in NFL history for a season. But that one game, which is a big game, changed the whole thing. I still am frustrated and mad when I think about that game.
Yeah, that was
getting us frustrated just hearing about it.
I know, yeah, and everybody was yelling at the whole Cam Newton. Did he fall on the fumble? Did he not? I mean, just the whole way that game ended. That was brutal. Thankfully, I was not broadcasting that game, so I don't have as much frustration as you do and the guys up in the booth because when I'm just down there on the sidelines, I don't have to, stay. I don't have to talk the whole time. They only come down to me when, if it's an injury or if there's something more, something good. Like at Detroit a couple of weeks ago, the entire fourth quarter, I didn't say a word because the whole game was sort of melting down and it was terrible. And so there was not much I could add from down there except guys are throwing their helmets, guys are mad, so they're pretty easy for me to do on a regular basis.
I just noticed Drew Poe, Sharon. I knew someone would do this. They're going to start playing My Sharona here pretty soon. Lama.
There we go. Yeah.
Mark Seller. Yep. Thanks, Carolina Focus. We're taking it on for you, man. So thanks for leading us and getting that thing started. But
I saw Mark was online here. Mark Seiler is Mark Thomas, and he said a couple times the Season of Hope, which was the A great story with Kevin Donnelly, obviously, as
Absolutely.
well. Mark
Yes.
says, this is going back to our WRFX days. Great times working and golfing with you and Mr. Bill. Panthers in 60. Mark Thomas used to do this bit on the Larson Show, Panthers in 60, where he would just take all the, just the conversation parts, not even any play-by-play, a little bit of play-by-play thrown in there, but it was mostly just Mick and Eugene and me just rambling thoughts. And it was called Panthers in 60, but it was really about Panthers in 180 as far as seconds go. And
so
he did
great.
such a great job for that.
Mark,
Yeah.
we need to have you in sometime.
Oh,
Tell
yes.
some stories.
Thanks for taking on Carolina Focus, Mark says.
You can
Hand
take
it off
back
the baton.
if you want.
Yeah, you can have it back, Mark. You want it? No.
Yeah,
Let's see.
we need to.
Hey, who's sponsoring this? Is it Dry Otter? Who's doing the sponsorship here?
Dry Otter.
Waterproofing.
Dry Otter waterproofing.
That's a big business these days.
This is true.
Yeah, it's a lot of
guys for sponsoring.
lot of work to be found with otters and waterproofing and dry otters.
Jim, Sharon and I were talking earlier today, and filling in some sports and all. I think that what the folks try to realize is we have a minute to do a sports update, or a minute and 10 seconds. And what I do is I imagine what you want to hear. Imagine what the listener wants to hear, because you have choice amount of words and you can fill up a minute so quickly. And you got to validate your data. And then I think the other thing we were talking about is tennis players' names. And if you can't pronounce them, you don't want to come off like a fool there. And the tennis people that know how to pronounce these names go, listen to these guys. So, I mean, when you put your sports segments together, you two, besides that, what other things are you trying to accomplish in that minute time?
Jim?
Oh, me first? Well, first of all, on the tennis comment, my trick to that is, whether you're right or wrong with the pronunciation, say it with extreme authority and sell it as if it is the correct name. And they'll start questioning whether they're right in thinking it was.
Oh,
very good. Very good.
You get a lot of those Romanians and Czechoslovakians and all that. Just say it with great authority and just keep on moving. For me, I try to hit, obviously, the local stuff is, like, I'll be honest, I already started writing tomorrow's sports headlines, and I will share that with you of what that is, if I can find it. I already sent it to myself, and I email it, and I'll update it as the night goes on. So I'm starting with, because they have a big match tonight, Charlotte FC playing Miami. I've got the Hornets having not played, but tomorrow, you have to think ahead. Tomorrow's Thursday. They got a preseason game with Boston. Don't really have Panthers news because of the bye. We've been doing it all week. American League Championship Series, Rangers and Astros on tap. Anthony Richardson season-ending shoulder surgery confirmed. Chiefs reacquiring McCole Hardman from the Jets in a trade. Previewing Thursday night Jaguars and New Orleans Saints. That's just a little template to get me started, and I'll rotate different things in and out. And Carolina Hurricanes played the other night, so I did them this morning. So it just depends on what's going on. But I try to hit the big national headlines and then what's local, and with college stuff when I can. Sharon, you can talk about afternoons. I mean, for me, it's like I have to recap stuff that happened the night before. Right. I like to have time to have a few seconds to kind of say something big's coming up. I will say it. But for you, yours is kind of more that, right? Where you kind of like the news of the day, but looking ahead to what's coming up this evening.
Exactly. Because I'm not going to report scores or anything for the evening show, for the afternoon and evening sports, because that happened so long ago. So unless there's like afternoon baseball or something, like the Braves played an afternoon game or something like that. But so, I tend to look more ahead. Like tonight, I previewed the Charlotte FC match and the baseball game, of course. And actually, I had seen some Panther news, so I hope that I was right on this. Like Ed said, you got to verify. But that Jeremy Chin is reportedly out for 6 weeks with a quad injury. So,
wow.
You know what? I've been traveling actually today and all that. I did not even know that.
Yeah, that came across late. Yeah, and I had seen him on the sidelines on Sunday. Actually, they were rolling out his quad, and they kept working on his quad down in Miami. So I guess maybe that cried uncle on him or something. So many soft tissue injuries this year. It's terrible. So
to Adam Schefter reporting it. Like a lot of times I don't know what to think of some of these people. Adam Shefty is reporting significant quad injury, expected to sideline him up to 6 weeks. Does not need surgery. He's in the last year of his contract, scheduled to be a free agent after the season. So folks, thanks to Sharon through Adam Schefter, you got breaking Panthers news that I
Woohoo!
didn't even know about till just now.
But
Yes.
Adam Schefter is a credible source. You got to watch out for your sources sometime.
You do, because I've done that before where I see something, especially Twitter. I mean, I get on Twitter a lot to check for recent news and stuff like that, because a lot of it is breaking on Twitter and you can find it there. But somebody had done some like crazy story and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And I was started to type and I was like, wait a minute, let me just check that. And I looked and it was total farce. I forget what it was. Somebody bit
Right.
The Onion or something
like that. So
The Onion.
people put stuff out there all the time on Twitter, and if you don't know to think that might not be right, you can sound like a complete fool and put something out on the air that's not true. So
Right. Gotta be careful with that.
yeah.
I've seen Schefter actually reported that like 7 hours ago. Just not trying to. I would normally have seen something like that. We had to go to a funeral today, so I wasn't around today to notice that. So that was actually 7 hours ago. But that's significant news. This team, the defense with Shaq, season-long injury, and the secondary having 3 of the 4 guys out, and now Chin. I know he's not had a great season, but that's at some point you're just playing practice squad and special teams players as starters, just trying to cobble together a lineup out there.
Are we more sensitive to it these days, guys? Because it seems like there's not only the Panthers, a lot of injuries, and it's shortened preseason or what? Is that
that's I don't know, but with the Panthers, when you look at, it was Dante had the shoulder, but you've got the hamstrings, the quads. You've got Xavier Woods out with that. You've got Von Bell out with that. Now you've got Chin out with the quad. You've got Yetur Gross-Matos went down with a hamstring in the game on Sunday. It's just rampant across the NFL that there are just nonstop soft tissue injuries. And so I've often thought about that. Ed and I digress about this often, but Jake Delhomme was talking about it over there down in Miami, that he thinks guys have gotten so big and strong now that they get like tight and don't, that it's easier to pull a muscle when you're sort of tight and, so big and strong. That could be one reason. Maybe the shortened preseason, because it's so different now and guys really don't play much except for the backup guys and guys fighting for a roster spot. So maybe just having to just dive into all the way out, all out football, that it's harder to make that adjustment, because you can be in shape, but football shape's a whole different thing. Game shape's a whole different thing. So that could certainly be it. Who knows? But the Panthers have certainly had their fair share of it this year, which has been a real drag for this defense, because the defense starting out at the beginning of the season, even down in Atlanta, they played great. They played well, and they've had some good, they've should be really good defensively. But when you have one hand tied behind your back, like Toki was saying with, practice squad guys that they literally just signed off the practice squad and have to come up and play on Sunday, and special teamers that are doing it, it makes it difficult, especially when we just played Miami with that unbelievable offense.
This Joe Panko, you see the fake news he just threw out? Just in, 49ers beat Cleveland, field goal good. What's wrong with that? Oh, no.
If only, right? If only that was fake.
That's Joe Panko taking a personal shot at me, I think, on that Browns victory there.
Hancock wants more Buffalo stories.
As in Colorado Buffaloes, yeah, that's
Colorado
his team.
Buffalo, yeah, not Buffalo Bill.
Oh, hey, well, they're a lot of fun to talk about right now.
Yeah, they are.
Definitely. Colorado, Neon Dion out there, he's got them rolling, so. Or at least it's fun. They're fun to watch, even if they're losing some games now. But he's turned up the juice out there in Colorado.
Yeah, although that Stanford loss was pretty horrific.
I cannot believe that. How are you up 29-0 at halftime and then just diddle that away? Like, what happened? So that was brutal.
That's awesome. Brutal. All right, John's got a question. I'll get to it in a minute. I want to catch up on some others. We'll get to Hancock here. Just take a minute. Or Szoke, what was it like working as Jeff Pilot for a couple of years? So that's when I was doing traffic reporting. And the funny thing about that is when I was doing that, I was also Jim Szoke doing part-time sports, like how Ed Billick is doing. So there were times, this is how much smaller of a town Charlotte was. We would land at the airport. I would drive down Wilkinson Boulevard. We'd land the plane at like 6, whatever. And I would be on the air at 7 doing our sports huddle, filling in for Steve Martin, not every night, but a lot of nights. So I would go and no one ever said, boy, you sound just like the guy that was doing traffic reports half an hour ago.
So Jim, how long were you in the air in that afternoon? How long were you up flying around?
In a day or in like lifetime span?
Oh, in a day.
We did 2 shifts. We did a morning and an afternoon. It was a split shift. We did 3 hours in the air, like 6 till 9 a.m. in the morning and like 3 till 6 p.m. in the afternoon. So it was a true split shift.
Oof.
Every day.
Scared. You couldn't have gotten me to go up in that little tin can helicopter myself. So,
well, this was an airplane, but yeah, I would not want to do a helicopter either.
Either one. I'd have been
no-go.
hard. I'd have been hard.
Our buddy Joe Mitchell, one of my best memories was sitting in the WBT studio with Jim Roman, breaking down the Rams-Panthers game. Roman was my hero as a child. Jim was and is still a great friend. I'm sure he meant to say hero there. I have a great lot of memories in there with Jerry V, Jim, Byron, Putman. Jerry V, you were here for those days, right, Sharon, when Jerry Valancourt was doing sports talk?
I was. Yeah. He had the Jerry V show from, I think it was 6 to 7 every night. That was my first year working at WBT. And I remember he was here and had his big show and did all the stuff with the Hornets. So he was a character. He helped me so much. He helped me get my first, get my bearings doing sidelines the first time. I had just started doing that with ESPN Regional TV. And I was like, what do I do? Because I'd never done it before. And I remember him tutoring me in the lobby at WBT saying, all right, you need to do this. You need to ask this and stuff. He was great. So he was a big help for me. I love Jerry V. He was awesome.
Absolutely. Let's see. Tammy says, love the WBT crew. Y'all are awesome. Listen in the AM and on the way home. Hate to say I'm a huge 49ers fan. That went south. But pull for the Panthers if not playing for my team. Okay, so we're your second best team. We got
a few former Panthers out there. We got Steve Wilkes, Christian McCaffrey, Sam Darnold. So we can that's okay.
I do.
That's allowed.
Yeah, we can all this year. Is Darnold see any playing time?
Not yet. It's been Brock Purdy. So
yeah,
not yet. I think we could all while we take this one on collectively. It's from a listener, John Hancock. Jim, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of play-by-play announcers?
Oh wow!
Why don't we won't limit it to I know Mount Rushmore means 4. What I like this. We'll just make it list. Like I'll go with Ed first, then Sharon, then I'll chime in. Like who are your sports broadcasting influences? It could be local that you grew up with, or national, or today, or past year. I won't put any kind of boundaries on it, but who are the ones, past or present, that you feel are the best?
Just from a journalistic and from his career, I would have loved to have been Bob Costas. Bob Costas, he did Mickey Mantle's eulogy at his funeral. This guy's experienced so much. He's done so much in baseball. He loves baseball, but he is a kind of broadcaster that I definitely looked up to. Of course, growing up in Pittsburgh, it was Bob Prince, the gunner, and some of those local guys. But yeah, Bob Costas, if I could have switched places, I would have loved to have done his work. He's such a pro.
Yeah. How about you, Sharon?
I always loved, just from a sideline standpoint, Michelle Tafoya. She's just been the cream of the crop when it comes to being on the sidelines and the way she would interview players and coaches. And she was never like, ditzy, silly. Like I can't stand that when people do that. She knew her stuff. She was so well prepared, and I miss her on the sidelines a lot. Lisa Salters is all good and everything, and Melissa Stark, but Michelle Tafoya to me is the best one. And I'm having mental block on my favorite broadcaster there of all time. He did Major League Baseball, the Sunday Night Baseball.
He's on my list. I just wrote him down.
Yes. What is his name?
John Miller.
No, him, the other one. The other guy who did it with him.
But Joe Morgan was with him
Joe
as
Morgan.
well.
I love Joe Morgan. I love the two of them. That was my favorite thing with that Sunday Night Baseball.
I literally just scrambled that down. I wrote John Miller and Joe Morgan. That was the best. I would think you was going to say John, because John was the Orioles announcer for many years.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, but I still love the two of them. But I love Joe Morgan's voice. He was just smooth, and they were just so great. They were my favorites.
So many great announcers.
I got to meet, like I did that Mulligan movie. I got to meet Jim Nance, and obviously, when you talk about somebody who's done everything, he was so genuine and met everybody in the room, hung out for like 45 minutes. He was the real deal. He had no reason to come early, stay late. He had to go do the Saturday round of the Wells Fargo Championship, and we did our taping at the hotel he was staying at in a meeting room with a green screen behind us, and we just riffed on lines and stuff, and he could not have been nicer. And it's funny, if you ever see the movie, he calls me Szoke. He asks me before we get going, he goes, what's your handle? I go, my handle? Like with like CB radio? Like, what are you talking about? I go, what's your nickname? I go, it's boring. But I go, it's Szoke, because my name's Zoki, so it's Szoke. So in the movie, he calls me Szoke like 3 times, and that's in the movie. Like, that's my name. And people know who Jim Nantz is. People watching his movie everywhere else are like going, who's the other buffoon? Who's this
Szoke?
guy? It's like Szoke. Like, who is Szoke? I mean, he must be a famous announcer like Jim Nantz. Like, no. And I just met Mike Tirico up in Michigan for the ECU Michigan game.
Oh yeah.
Not have been nicer. And I will say was a fan before meeting him, but like Jim Nantz does all the different sports, golf, football, basketball, whatever it is. And I think he's such, as far as current guys that are working like all the time, I think Tirico is spot on. I think he's so good. His tone is just right. He's so smart. He's like, yeah, if you want, because he lives in Ann Arbor, he goes, when you come by the stadium tomorrow, come by and I'll give you all the insight on the Wolverines and all that stuff. Could not have been nicer. I didn't go in. Our booth was actually very near theirs. And every time I looked in, it looked like there were like 20 people in there working. So I just like, I won't bother him today. But we probably talked like 15 minutes down the field at Ann Arbor, Michigan Stadium. So that was cool.
Yeah.
All these guys, the story is about the game. It's not about them.
Yes. Yeah.
Someone mentioned Vince Scully over here. It's about the game. It's about the experience. It's not about them.
Absolutely. One guy, a local one or more local, who I always love too, is Gene Deckerhoff. In similar role to Jim there, with being with the Buccaneers for so long, but also with Florida State. When I was at Florida State for 5 years, he was the voice of the Seminoles for the longest time. He was a trip. So
Gene Deckerhoff's one of my favorites. Fire the cannons. Who's your guy in Pittsburgh with the Raise the Jolly Roger? Who's the Pirates announcer?
That's Greg Brown. Greg Brown. But then again, you talked about Mike Lang of the Pittsburgh Penguins. If there's any Pittsburgh, hey, shoots and scores. Like a cheap cigar. Elvis has just left the building.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great lines. They always play his bites for that stuff. All right. What else we got from the listeners? We got about 20 more minutes here. We got scrolling down past Hancock. Jethro writes, Joe Brady called offense under rule as Thomas Brown going to be similar. And Sharon, you can jump in on that one. I don't think so, but what do you think?
No, I don't think so at all. First of all, Joe Brady was totally inexperienced. I mean, he just was not. No, I do not think it'll be anything like that. Thomas Brown has had his hand in this offense from day one. I mean, he's been involved since, OTAs and stuff. So this offense, Frank Reich just was talking about this, and Thomas Brown both this week when we spoke with them. He said the offense is not going to change in the sense of they're not installing a new offense or anything like that. Now, I think that he's going to definitely try to take advantage of what Bryce Young is doing well right now. You saw a lot of that against Miami. Those first two drives, he was just spot on. They were doing that quicker paced offense. They did a lot of no huddle stuff because he seems to really do well with that. He's got that great connection with Adam Thielen. So I think that they're going to try to get the run game going. He has a history as a running backs coach, and I think that they would really like to get that run game moving to take some of the pressure off of Bryce Young. And but I don't think it's going to be similar to under the Matt Rule era at all. I think Thomas Brown is going to do a great job with it.
Well, guys, what's this free Coach Wright up to do now? How will he better use his time?
It lets him be, there are many coaches that do play calling that are head coaches. They think about Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. I know Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland does that. So you can have great success doing both. But to answer your question, it frees him up to be more of an overseer of all things, which are defense, special teams, just things like focusing on clock management. So there's stuff during the week and stuff during the game where if he doesn't have to think about the next play, he can think more about maybe personnel and other things. Because Thomas, they just kind of flip-flop. Thomas is the lead guy, but Frank will have input, whereas before Frank was the lead guy and Thomas had input. So it just changes the hierarchy, but he'll still have influence of what's going on with all that.
Absolutely. And he said that he's going to still be in the quarterback's room. He's still going to have a lot of interaction more with the offense and with the defense, but it does free him up to be able to go into some more of the defensive meetings, to be able to come over. Like, that's one thing on the sidelines. He spends a lot of time with the offense, but he does not come over to the defense much. He said he'll be able to interact more with players on the sidelines as well during the game. So he's going to have a little more time to do things like that I think he'll probably look forward to. He said it was hard to let go when you've been a play caller for such a long time. He said he had to wait for the right time, and he felt like now is the time that he could step away from that. So I think that it'll benefit the team in general, and I think Coach Reich will like it better too.
We got about 15 minutes or less. Folks, if you're out there watching, listening, what questions do you have for us?
We got a great one here. I was getting ready to tee up for you guys. You ready? I'll go first because it'll give you a chance to think about it. But I love this question. It's from Rebecca. have any of you had major flops on the air or embarrassing moments? I have too many to count, but I have two that stick out of my mind. And one of them I have to phrase correctly because it involves a bad word. But one was, and they're all malaprops. There's nothing that's intentional. But I was working with Russell and Flynn doing Saturday morning sports back when my early days, Ed, you'll appreciate this. I'm on with Don Russell. I know you love Don Russell. And so I'm doing a story about shoeless Joe Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike my 6th or 7th sportscast, I somehow towards the end of the show flipped it during my sportscast and called him Showless Jew Jackson. And Don is Jewish. So this is just perfectly awful. And so, Don is so funny. And so he just starts doing this voice. I'm Showless Jew. I have no show. Oy vey. I mean, it was just so bad. It was awful. And then another one was we did at Longhorn Steakhouse every Thursday night. Bill Rosinski, Bill Polian, and me did it was basically the front office show, but it was brought to you by City Chevrolet. Every single break, all season long, 6 times a show, brought to you by City Chevrolet. I go to break sometime in November after like 3 or 4 months of saying that. I don't say City Chevrolet. I say the alliteration of Chevrolet.
Yep.
I don't want anybody in trouble here, so I say.
Yeah, there's no dump button here.
And not only there's no dump button, but I'm in a restaurant, so I have to look at everybody just laughing. I hear the fork being dropped onto the plates as we go to break, and I just look at Bill Pulley and I go, "Well, no funny way out of that one."
Oh, that's hysterical.
It was like I couldn't believe that. So that was a favorite. Do you guys have any?
It's really funny.
Anything that you I don't know, embarrassing moments or saying things the wrong way that you recall?
Yeah. When I first started doing my stuff with ESPN Regional, I went around to the Mid American Conference, Bowling Green, Szoke. I was at Bowling Green and
White Perry Stadium.
Yeah, Bowling Green and on the side of the highway in a cornfield, basically, is where Bowling Green is. But
it is.
I was doing a game at Northern Illinois, and it was remember Michael the Burner Turner? He was a running back down for the Falcons. He was their running back for Northern Illinois, and they were playing, of all people, Urban Meyer when he was at Bowling Green. And so it was a big game, and they had all this big stuff going on at halftime, and some big famous alumni, which I don't know how many there are from Northern Illinois, but was there for me to interview at halftime. And this was similar to the Susie Colbert, not quite so bad, but he was just had a whole lot to drink, like a whole lot, like could barely stand up. I don't know why they even brought him down for me to do the interview, but he was like, basically, I mean, literally like falling all over me and like trying to like lean on me because he could not even like stand up. And it was just awful. And they had me keep trying to do this interview with him. I'm like, you gotta be joking. And finally somebody from the university came and said, okay, enough of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like my 3rd game I'd ever done it. I was just mortified, but it wasn't my fault, but still it was bad.
Sounds like a drunk guy at a bar.
Exactly. And then when I first started at WBT, Al Gardner, of course, was our longtime morning show host, and he knew that I was a huge Carolina fan. And he was probably after, a big basketball win or something. And so we'd come in to do sports, and we wouldn't be on the air yet. They'd be doing traffic or news. And so the producer at the time was pulling up the Carolina fight song. So he was going to be able to play that, when we came back for the segment. So I started singing. Well, Al recorded that. And to this day, every now and then, if somebody knows where to look for it, it's in the archives at WBT of Sharon's, this horrible rendition of the Tar Heel fight song. And
that's great.
I'm sure Mark remembers this. Larson used to play it like religiously and just mortify me. So
that's awesome.
But now I can't get rid of it. So I'm forever on the air somewhere singing Tar Heel fight song.
Yeah,
the one was a Freudian slip. We had a producer. She was fairly nervous about doing things correctly, and it was one of my first times ever doing live sports in the morning. And Garrison was the news host. Yeah, I think it was a Monday through Friday that put the extra pressure on, so my hands are sweaty and all. And I'm up to about the 55-second, going into about a minute 5. And this producer comes right in front of my face and goes like this, wrap it up.
Oh,
whoa. I says, I'm at Billick, the radio home of the Steelers. News Talk 1110, WBT. Mark Garrison looks at me, he goes, we now carry the Steeler games? I was so nervous. It should have been radio home the Carolina Panthers. I go radio home the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's hysterical. Wow.
Don't you ever do that to me again.
That's really funny.
We know where your allegiances were that day.
Oh my God.
And this is written to me, but it involves you. One of from Will. One of my favorite memories about Szoke was listening to the announcement of his introduction to the WBT Hall of Fame, which of course was that Friday morning show, and how he called in 10 seconds before he showed up in the studio. Probably one of the best memories in the history of WBT Hall of Fame announcements over these many years.
And
so
tell us again how that unfolded. Oh, that was crazy.
It actually was a Wednesday now I think about it, because every Wednesday at 9:30 I record primetime in the ACC, and I just do it on the phone. It's 2 segments. It takes about half an hour. And that morning, so I have no idea as this show is unfolding that I'm going to be inducted. I have no clue. They want to keep it a secret to surprise me. And no one really said anything about Bo at one point said something like, will you be sticking around? And I said, because he said, Hancock's coming in, HA and John Stokes are all coming in. They'll want to see you. And I'm like, yes, of course. I want to see them too. Well, as it turns out, earlier in the show, when they come in the building, I'm passing by the lobby. I bring them all into the studio. So in my mind, I've met and seen everybody. I hung out and talked to them for like 5 minutes during a commercial break. And I went back about my day. And at about, 9:05 or whatever, I walk out because I'm going to go try to do the show from home at 9:30. And I'm driving home, and Ed calls me first. I think he calls me twice, but one of the times he calls and says, hey, are you here? Because Stokes wanted to ask you something on the air or talk to you, Stokes. We're all going to talk to Stokes on the air. And I'm like, I can't really. I got to do this show. So you guys just carry on or whatever. And then Bo calls and he's like, are you not here? I go, no, I got to record my show. And he sounds really tense. And the third call comes from Sandra, my wife. And she's at I don't know this because I don't know what's going on. She's at the station. She goes, get in here right now. The car around and get back in here right now. Everyone's waiting on you. So I now I've now figured out what the surprise is going to be.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
But Will's right. I call in. So this is very surreal. Bo does these great montages, right? So he's got this audio tribute, and it's like, I don't even know. It feels like it's like 10 minutes long. It's close to what it is. So I'm turned around in traffic trying to get back to the station. I'm listening to it on the radio like a listener would in their car, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but at the same time panicking because I'm trying to get back before the show ends to be on there with them before 10 o'clock. And so I call in, or they call me, and I'm talking with them on the phone. I said, I'm pretty close, and they literally have me on the phone walking through the hallways.
I'm here.
And I'm on the phone as I turn the corner around the hallway to the studio. There's Sandra, my aunt and uncle, my kids, Ed, all these people.
Oh my gosh.
And I just look at them. I walk through and I do like maybe 30 seconds on the air. We think we could blow off half of a newscast one time, right? But we can't. Always got to do the news top of the hour. So anyway, I made it barely, but it was very funny to find out in that way. In one way, it made it like better because it was perfect. But on the other hand, it'd been nice to just kind of sit, relax, and listen to it and be surprised. But
yeah,
it's the way it was meant to be, right?
Oh, I love it that it's Sandra saying, get back in here right now. Then you know you're in trouble. That's classic. That's classic.
All right, kids, here's one for you from, looks like CC Rogers, who wrote a couple. When does Szoke sleep? About 4 hours a night. I'll answer that one real quickly. It says Brett Jensen's having a great show. Too much to juggle. Congratulations, Brett, on having a great show tonight. So I guess for the group, so Charlotte sports journalists, I have listened to journalists in Philly, New York. They torch their teams, coaches, players, GMs, etc. How are y'all able to believe with that Southern charm and politeness when speaking about Carolina sports? So, I'm sorry. How do you all behave? I read that wrong. So how do you all behave? So, start with Sharon. You're definitely a Southerner out of this group because Ed's Pittsburgh. I'm from Ohio. How do you handle the
New Jersey
right about these teams?
Technically, I'm from New Jersey, but I grew up in the South.
I didn't know that till right now.
Yes, I'm from Hackensack, New Jersey. Yes,
I did not know that. Okay, never mind.
We moved to North Carolina when I was 6.
We all live together.
But I think it's just the whole atmosphere down here in general. People just don't behave like that. Like, mom and dad's a New Yorker now. Like I said, was from New Jersey originally. But people are just a little more forward and just sort of say what they think. I think especially in the big cities and Philly and the sports talk shows and stuff like that. I think that people just down south in general are a little more refined, a little more well-behaved. And I don't know. I just would never dream of speaking to anybody that way in public and then try to have a working relationship with them on top of that. If I'm going to sit up here and just bash Frank Reich or, Bryce Young or whoever, then I have to go in there in the locker room the next day and say, hey, Bryce, can I get an interview? So I think you got to balance that. But I think that treating everybody with respect is the way to do it. So, I'm not trying, or at least I'm not anyway, trying to get like clicks for whatever or listens from me bashing a coach or a player or something like that. So I just try to treat everybody respectfully and try to get the truth out there and the story out there without having to throw my spin in there as well.
Yeah, Jim, I think that's role modeled by everybody that works at this station. And that's what I enjoy about the teamwork and the camaraderie of all the professionals at WBT. Because I just go up and down the news department, traffic. Everybody's like that. The respectfulness is pretty high.
No, absolutely. And, like Sharon said, I mean, that's kind of like a sports talk persona, that bashing and trying to get fan reaction. And so to me, that's more like it doesn't have to be FNZ. That's like many sports talks shows are in that vein. For you and I, we work with the teams, we cover them, we go in, like most of the guys who do that kind of behavior don't walk into locker rooms, don't walk into ball games.
No.
And they just kind of, fire their barbs from the safety of their studio and then go home. Yeah. But for us, like, we do work with it. It's also not my personality. I'll be honest. It's just, that's not who I am. But I think there are ways of saying things where I also want to be real though. I don't also, when you go 1-15, you don't want to sit there and act like you're 15-1.
Right.
But there are ways and words and tone and things that are said that you can still convey the message and not be, that divisive with people. So exactly. I think a safe approach. A lot of times I'll get asked a question like, what happened there? I go, well, what Coach Rivera said there, or, what Coach Clifford said there, or Coach Reich said there was that. And then I'll put my own spin on it. But I figure it's always a good way to go. And then, you do try to find the positive. I think we're all fans of our teams. Like I want to see the Panthers and Hornets and all the teams here win. So I don't believe in. I've never been a boo my own team guy. Like as a fan, and I grew up in Cleveland. All right, so I grew up in Cleveland. Maybe I booed something like an individual play here and there, but by and large, I am not one to boo my own team because that doesn't really help anything. Or I don't know. It's just
no.
You can. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying it's not who I am. Fans should be fans, and they should be unhappy. They spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. We appreciate them. They are the thing that makes the whole money thing happen, whether it's merchandise, ticket sales, TV rights, all that stuff. So I think fans do have a right within reason of not punching each other in the face, of voicing their displeasure. So that's why they should be fans, and they do have that right. It's just not my personality. I've just never been one to, like, by and large, be that way anyways.
Absolutely. Same way. So let's see.
Hancock's doing a nice job tonight, guys.
All right.
Big John.
Well, if John Hancock, Hall of Famer, says that. Here's one. Here's Sharon. How about best media food buffets? You got a favorite best media food buffet?
Seattle was pretty good, but I think Atlanta, at least in the ones that I've been to so far. I mean, Atlanta is awfully good. So Miami had the same thing. The Panthers always have barbecue.
Have you been to Tampa yet with us for the Buccaneers? Have you had a game in Tampa?
I have not. No, that one's this year. So
carving stations, Cuban sandwiches, bananas Foster at halftime. Tampa does it right.
Wow. Okay. Atlanta had a pretty good spread too. And the best thing about Seattle was the Starbucks they had the barista there making lattes. I was like, this is awesome. So can't beat that. Even though she was grumpy. But
absolutely. All right, we got like 2 minutes left. What you guys say? Final thoughts. We begin with Ed Billick as we begin our final thoughts segment here. It was
great conversation. Everybody joining in here, and thanks to all the listeners and all the comments and the different insights. We love what we do. I love what I do, and I'm just grateful to be part of a great team at WBT.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the comments, and somebody mentioned, well, the Panthers win a game this year. Yes, I have faith that the Panthers are going to win at least one game this year. I think that they're going to get some guys back here after the bye, get some guys back healthy. Hopefully Austin Corbett will be coming back soon, and some of these defensive guys back, and get Thomas Brown and his spin on the offense in there. And I think we're gonna turn the corner here after the bye and start maybe putting a few wins together.
I agree with you.
Optimistic view.
Jeff Atkinson writes in, you guys are the best sports team in town. So thank you to our listener, Jeff Atkinson, for that. They just did the one Monday. I think that was when Jeff with Mark and the crew.
Yeah.
Oh, we got from the Good Morning BT, which this I believe would be Bo Thompson. Where is Carl Petaroja?
Carl Petaroja.
It's a little too inside for it not to be Bo Thompson. We did run into him. He was what you know this, Ed. He was one of the ushers at the Wells Fargo Championship.
Yep.
You know Carl?
Okay.
You may not know him, but he is one of the ushers that Marshall's. My bad.
I saw him.
Marshall.
I know you didn't do it this year, but he is one of the marshals out there.
Slide, please.
Yeah, I saw him this past year for the first time in like 20 years. So
you were with me when we ran into him at the golf.
Yeah, that was so fun. So long time WBT sportscaster reporter Carl was back in the day.
Petaroja, he's the best. All right, my final comment is just hang in there, Charlotte sports fans, because Sharon's been here a long time too, and Ed. But I was here when the Hornets were really, really popular, where they are on the Coliseum, and they had 20,000 every night. And they hung banners every year for attendance records. I mean, 20,000 for basketball every night. And that team wasn't even winning at first. And then they got going with Alonzo and LJ. So I know what those are like. And we all were here for the Panthers, 2015. Many of us were here. Sharon was for Super Bowl 38 in that year. So we know what it's like when it's really good. But hang in there. You're earning your fan stripes again more often than you want to. But that makes the great times even better when you kind of suffer through the down times. It makes you appreciate them, right, guys?
Absolutely. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
And we appreciate our listeners. I mean, you guys we talked about the bike drive and all that. We have great, we have great. There's Bill White, our former program director. Great job, all right here. That's the old Bob Hope right here. Bill White. Last I heard was in Sacramento. Bill's ago. We saw him out in Napa a couple of years ago. Sandra and I did, but we got great fans. But you guys, last thought, just our listeners, they really are interactive. They're very considerate. They're giving of their time and money when there are drives that we put together, and we really do appreciate that. And we know not everyone is going to type something in or call into a show, but for those of you who don't ever do that, we appreciate you too, just for being out there every day.
Absolutely. Love having the listeners, love having the people be involved like this. This is awesome. And we have the best listeners around, and I appreciate them immensely.
All right. Well, that's it for us. I know there's 2 more coming up next week. I think Monday and Wednesday on Talktoberfest. So thank you all for being here. And Ed and Sharon had a blast. The hour went by very quickly.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Absolutely.
Sure did.
It was great.
Guys, have a good evening. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good night.